Welcome everyone to the Kendall Report. In this video, I'm going to discuss the tariffs that's being proposed by President Trump and what their effects are going to be. There's a lot of views on this. I would like to give you my view. A lot of you have asked for that. Well, this is somewhat of a complex conversation to have. I'm not sure, I'll probably get into some rants, but there's some things that I want to cover here. And just to give you some context, in my 2024 Substack Outlook, I talked about something I think is really important. I'm a big advocate of AI, but I'm also more importantly is thinking that we're going to see some very big leaps and bounds in productivity, which is due to the AI and coming into what I call the fourth industrial revolution. In this video, I'm referring to this as actually the coming economic super cycle. And I think this is going to be pretty interesting because what I said in 2024, all of a sudden with Trump winning the election, things are starting to look even clearer. And one of the hypotheses that I had was that we would need to cut government spending or keep it at a constant rate and not see it expand every year. I was okay with expanding to a point, but if we go to a flat to negative growth in government, this equation that I've been talking about will be amazing. We'll see a bull market, we'll see an era of economic growth like never before. And that is the ingredient. So all of a sudden, those of you who've been around my channel know I always talk about this reverse fundamental. Here's what technically or quantitatively looks like will happen. Then what I look at is there anything out there that we can look at that would say, hey, this could be the elements. The tariffs are a very interesting thing. McKinley was president in the late manufacturer was assassinated. He was very impactful in setting up the 1889 tariffs that came about. They can be very powerful at that time, and I know it was a different time. I talk a lot about this where people will try to look in the rearview mirror and try to equate what happened 100 years ago or back in 1929. This is very similar, so expect the same outcome. I don't buy into that. I know many of you that have been around my channel, I talk often, is trading and even doing analysis is like driving on a dark country road, no moon with the bright lights on. You're always looking for the next corner. You have to look forward. The history will tell you some of the things that could happen, but the evolution of economies, if you look back to the 1800s when these tariffs were first really played really well, they've been used going way back actually, but just in the U.S. experience, that was one of the most successful periods of time. But looking at more recent times, and we currently have tariffs on China, that Trump put into place back in 2018, and they're still in there. Biden didn't move any of those elements at all. He also didn't change any of the tax cuts, the 2017 tax cuts that went into play during the Trump administrations. Leaving out the pandemic and all the dislocations of capital that happened during that time, everything that's in place today was actually put in by Trump. And a lot of times you'll hear one president blame the previous for what's going on. Well, Biden's been taking credit for at least the economic expansion that we've seen. The economic policy of tariffs may be what we get, but we may just be seeing Donald Trump at his best at being a negotiator and using these as levers to get things to go America's way, bring back industry here, especially when we get a new administration. It can reshape everything. And I think the possibility of reshaping the economy is huge. We have this major attribute coming in, which is the AI expansion of productivity, growing the economy and changing the complexity. Tariffs, which are going to ultimately replace some of the possible taxation that we experience, that we can actually see the market start to really acclimate itself to the new environment. The whole goal always has been is to protect jobs. Now, like I said, these things have been done off and on going back to the Roman Empire. This has been used for all types of economic expansion and protectionism, and it works really well, and it can be quite effective. And I think Trump has already shown that he can do that because we're going to be coming into the next era of economic growth. The foundation of the whole American industry success, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, the 1800s. Strategic tariffs helped create and protect industries, leading to emergence of giants. U.S. Steel, nations like South Korea, Japan have replicated the success globally, building leading industries and electronic and automobiles. This has been something that we've seen happen in a big scale. Somehow it didn't disrupt and cause inflation, but the tariffs can be unbelievably powerful, not just from a negotiating tool, but ensuring economic security. But this is the key element here, is negotiating from strength. The U.S. still has the best economy, the biggest economy in the world. There's some demographics going on in China right now that are likely to change everything and going forward. The general view is that China is rising, and China is not rising anymore. They're going through a lot of economic turmoil. Not only that, the demographics, when they went through the one-child policy, that actually affected so much. And now they have also the demographics. If you look at Japan, even in the U.S., is not as bad, but Japan is probably the worst. And then China's second, as they have this aging population. And now there's no workers to come in to do the cheap labor that China has been living on. The most likely the economic and industrial strength of China is going to be redistributed. So I won't go too deep in this, but this is a really key point to understand, because what will likely happen is they're not going to be able to compete at the same level. And you see other Asian nations, even in Europe, that this whole planet is going to get reorganized from the standpoint of labor. This is really important to understand from that standpoint, because this is going to lead the U.S. to negotiating from strength, provide leverage on the international trade scene. Trump is a great negotiator. Like him, hate him, don't care. He's good at what he does. He knows how to make deals, and he's proven that already, not just being in the government, but he's also proven that from the standpoint in his personal life and being able to build the enterprise he did. I've actually never met a billionaire, but I can tell you there's no stupid billionaires. They figured out something to get there. Other thing that people are overlooking, and I'm pretty positive on this mainly because I have a positive outlook on the markets. These tariffs can bring industry. Who's the leader in AI right now on the planet? It's the United States. OpenAI, the amount of servers that are being put in. We all know all of the drastic things that are going on in the economy right now from the standpoint of structuring towards AI. There's some energy issues, as I actually think utilities are going to be in industrial power through electric production. There's going to be new companies. There's going to be a new growth area. But these type of tariffs that we're talking about here can open up the door to a lot of investment coming in, research and development, innovation. This is where the planet's going. And it's interesting because a lot of this, the productivity gains that I'm going to be talking about and really projecting going forward are insane potential. And that tells me that what we're likely to see could even be much bigger than what I'm envisioning, looking at 2026, 27, 28, having an excess of 5 to 8% GDP growth in the United States. And I think the whole planet benefits here. And I think it's going to be a monster boom. And this will start from the tariffs and negotiating, getting folks to come back that I was talking about rebuilding the Rust Belt. Now that we have all these immigrants, they're not going to get everybody out, but we have a new labor force that could be implemented and bringing in a lot of industry. And there's going to be tons of robotics and robots. We're coming into a completely new era that nobody's ever seen before. And I think the productivity levels are going to be absolutely insane. What the critics mostly are talking about is price increases. This is going to be inflationary. One of the things that I have been discussing with you on my Substack is talking about what I see this echo bounce and CPI and other measurements start to increase as we go forward, as we come into 2025. It looks like it probably peaks out maybe second or third quarter of 2025, but we're definitely seeing this event that looks like inflation is going to come back. Is it the tariffs? It could be. I'm not arguing that everything's perfect here, but I do think it's going to help to reorganize and restructure a lot of industries. And the critics are trying to take one side. Let's face it, there's a lot of folks that aren't going to agree with anything that Donald Trump says. That's fine. He's president of the United States, and he's going to have an agenda. And at least for the first 2 years that we know of, there's going to be a unanimous government. And he's built a coalition government within. It's possible that a lot of these things will materialize. Be glad. I think this will be an amazing beginning of tie this together, because one of the hypotheses I've been talking about, we've been in a 2-year bull market. And the only thing that concerns me is a lot of folks that are bearish at the beginning of last year, now all of a sudden they're bullish. So we'll probably have some things to go through before we can get to the next level. I actually look at 2025 being Q2, Q3 is where things start to improve again. I think there will be a flat spot. But the critics are all pointing at this going to be inflationary. They're bringing out all the bad things that can happen. There can be trade wars where back and forth and raising. Sooner or later, it doesn't work for either party, and there's a moderation that comes. Now, how long does it take to get to those levels? I have no idea. That's just going to be a process, and it will happen as we go through this. Just looking at how they put these tariffs in place. If it's combined with domestic investment incentives, worker training programs, this is what I was alluding to a minute ago, this will get us a long ways down the trail. Adjustments that are going to be made, and I think it could be really fast, because now we can implement things so much faster than we could before. If you think about it, just looking back in the last couple of decades, we've had situations where things move a lot faster than they used to. We've all said that, and we know that to be true. Well, I think you're going to see the next level with AI going to bring in productivity and things that we're not going to have to work through step by step, robotics, other types of automation that's going to happen. I think the legal field, medical field, financial, there's just going to be a monster explosion, and the manufacturing will ultimately come back as well. This is going to be a really interesting situation. So as we look out to the future here, I think this could rebuild American manufacturing. Some of the tariffs, whether the parts that are made for cars in Mexico, whether that comes back or they work out some kind of situation where the tariffs aren't there and things get worked out that way. So a lot of things can happen that the tariffs are negotiating tools, and there'll be other things that the tariffs will generate. Take monies that are coming in on tariffs and put it into innovation and renovation, if you will, because America, when you go overseas to some of the newer environments, I was in Dubai, and everything's new there. There's nothing old. Then you go from there to go to Europe, and everything's old and different. And then you go to Asia. I was in Singapore, and I've been in China and through Hong Kong. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. And it's just when you see the differences in societies and what's going on, what my main hypothesis is that you're going to see things spread out over whole planet from the standpoint of who's going to benefit from these changes. And these tariffs are going to reorganize. There's going to be friendly folks coming into play that will do manufacturing. Not everything needs to be done here. We learned a lot from the pandemic. We saw the supply chain shortages, all of those things. This, I think, is going to be, I'm even going to call it like a renaissance. If you go to my Substack, it's kendallreport.substack.com. I believe I have it pinned at the top, but my 2024 Outlook, I'm working on the 2025, which will lever off of some of the concepts that I had there, which I'm discussing in this video, is going to give us the ability to start to see some of the innovation, some of the productivity that's going to come in, and some of the other attributes that I think are going to drive everything. And like I said, it doesn't all have to happen here. Is that we're really looking to create an environment that American businesses can thrive. We need to take down some of the regulations so things can get done faster. We need more efficiencies. We look at the Department of Efficiency. These guys aren't even getting paid to do this. They love the country, and they're going to cut out a lot of fat. They're talking about $2 trillion. This will be very interesting to watch. So that equation of flat to lower government spending and GDP growth, and one of the things that I believe that's going to happen from that will be that the debt to GDP ratio, it takes about 3 to 5 years. If you can get in plus 5%, we saw this back in the 80s when inflation was still very high. But if you have inflation even at 3%, 3.5%, which is likely to be kind of where it gets sticky at, even if you have that and you have this government spending cuts and efficiency brought in, and then you get real economic growth going, it goes through the roof. So as I think that the utility, electricity, and some other industries are going to explode just because of the demand for everything. It's not just electricity. I'm a big advocate of atomic energy, and some of these micro reactors that are out there are absolutely phenomenal, some of the technology out there. As we go forward here, understanding that these are tools of economic expansion, they're tools to, obviously, there's some immigration issues here that those are some of the negotiations that need to happen. Whether that works out or not, or we end up in trade wars, no way to tell that. But I do want to be fairly optimistic here. I'm always an optimist for one reason or another. But what I see going forward, positive growth that's likely to, not just in the U.S., on the entire planet. The hypothesis is the tariffs can get implemented correctly and strategically. They can do all the things that I've talked about on this video. And the final notes that I have here, look at what a 5+% GDP would mean. You want to look at what it would look like if we did cut $2 trillion out of the budget, plus we got government spending under control. It's going to be a very interesting point in time. I really appreciate you spending the time to watch this. This will be the beginning of a series of things that I want to bring out as far as perspectives as we go forward in the economy. Thank you again for watching. Make sure before you leave, hit the subscribe button. If you like this content, hit that notification bell so you'll know when I do my next video. Thanks for watching.